Parul. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Neha, for having me here.
You have held some of the impactful roles, I would say, in human rights and justice. Before we dive into the complexities of these roles, if you could share a bit about your personal motivation or drive working for this complex roles or responsibilities that comes with these titles.
Oh, wow, that's a huge question there. What is the motivation? Well, I really honestly don't know what the motivation is. It's surely not happiness because it's whatever task I've had the past 25 years or whatever assignment I've had has been very heavy. In the sense that we live in a bit of an upside-down world, more so than ever. At this time, I would say 2025 is really the year where we can say that the world did not take the turn we all would guess it would, with all the knowledge we have when it comes to human rights, development, sustainable development. So I think what is my main drive is probably conviction. I know that change will happen, but I also know that change is slow. So I haven't really stopped working for the past 25 years, and I will probably continue for as long as it is demanded from the situation we are in, basically. So I really don't know what the drive is, more than that I am convinced that this is the way I need to go in order to contribute with some changes, or at least feel when I retire from this world, basically, that I have contributed with something at least.
At the Swedish Anti-Corruption Institute, what kind of corruption are you most focused today?
So I'm the Secretary General of the Swedish Anti-Corruption Institute, which has been around since 1923. Not me so much, but the institute, yes, over 100 years now. So it's a very old institute, and people are always, especially when I talk to international colleagues, they're like, but what do you do? I mean, you don't have any corruption in Sweden, so what do you do all day long?
That was my follow-up question. Is there any corruption in Sweden? What do you think?
Excellent. Can I tell you a story? A few months back, I was up north in Sweden. I was in Gällivare and Kiruna, very up north. And I was sharing from the airport, sharing a taxi with an Iraqi surgeon who, what he does is he travels around 1 week in southern Sweden, 1 week in western, 1 week in, wherever, Gothenburg. And now he was going to Kiruna. So he started talking about his job, and then he asked me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm heading an institute called the Swedish Anti-Corruption Institute." And he said, "So what do you do there? I mean, you don't have any corruption in Sweden." And then I started explaining to him that we do have corruption in Sweden, and we have maybe not that kind of top-level corruption which certain countries live with on a daily basis. But we do have corruption which is sometimes invisible, sometimes, shuffled under the carpet. And I gave him few examples. Conflict of interest and nepotism is probably the most common form of corruption in Sweden. And when I gave him few examples, he reached his hotel, and he just stood by the taxi door for a while, and he looked at me and he said, "Sister, this is the most dangerous form of corruption, the invisible one, which you can't see, but it's there." And he's right. So I think on a daily basis, I am working with this sort of invisible corruption in a society which has, given its utmost to claim that we don't have any corruption. And whenever we start seeing certain unethical transactions coming up to the surface, we actually shut down. That's how the society is built in Sweden, actually.
So when you talk about just following up on the point that you mentioned, so
Mm.
it exists everywhere,
Mm.
as you're saying. So when you say about in the different levels, so we always think when it comes to corruption that it only exists at the top level. Does it exist at, I would say, from low to high, small to large, or public to private? Does it exist everywhere?
It does. And we all are corrupt. It sounds very brutal to claim or say something like that, but all of us are corrupt. I mean, the mere definition of corruption is the abuse of a dominant position or a position of power. That's the definition of
Exactly.
corruption. And power is nothing static. That power could be very momental. It could be a 5 minutes window for me, which I use fully and completely to benefit something which has to do with me, either monetary or non-monetary, or which has to do with someone in my family or my child or my niece or nephew.
As a favor.
As a favor. Or a simple, you scratch my back and I scratch yours. That kind of an understanding. And so
So we all are corrupt
in a way.
in general.
And when I joined the institute, I thought for a very long time that I will deal with laws and legislations. I do quite a lot. I mean, the legal framework is very important in my work. But to be very honest, behavioral science is coming to be even more important. I listen to many behavioral scientists, many psychologists about human behavior, about the behavior of power, and this whole idea of power corrupts. It's actually a fact. Power does corrupt. It's how you regulate it as an individual which makes you a good leader. But many behavioral scientists say that we human beings are driven by two qualities. One is fear, and the other is greed. So fear and greed. And that's also two components of corruption at the same time.
Have you ever been offered a bribe or faced pressure because of a position or the power that you hold, or something like that?
I've never been offered a bribe as in something material. But yes, pressure, indirect pressure, yes, in various tasks. Mainly from political bodies, when I've had governmental positions, where they've tried to sort of direct my attention towards something where my attention shouldn't be. So yes, unnecessary pressure, absolutely, to make me change a decision or. But no monetary or material corruption has been offered to me.
And it is because of the Swedish system, which is hold that kind of power, or because it's when you talk about certain things, I mean, this happens even in the bureaucracy as well. Certain things. So do you think like it's very it's like accepting the fact that it's not happening, or it doesn't happen with you, or it didn't happen with you, or it's unrealistic for me.
But see, Neha, I mean, when I have worked in some 20 countries and really worked, and sometimes with government officials, sometimes with business people. So I've never been offered anything material or monetary corruption or suggestion of any sort. But I think it has to do with my personality also. Maybe I'm someone you don't want to provoke.
Provoke.
Could be. But I haven't experienced that. But I have a lot of people in my surrounding who have stories and who've had late night knocks on their hotel door with suggestions of, why don't you come with us, or why don't you change the report, or why don't you, you know.
But you have seen this happening, not with you, but anybody around working in the same profession.
I have seen it happening, absolutely. Especially, I have worked for many years as a what we call as a social auditor. So I've been around the world checking on Western value chains, production units. So I have seen corruption and the result of corruption and bribery from very, very closely. But I myself have never been a target for hardcore corruption.
Now we are switching our gears to United Nations Women Sweden, the position that you are heading. And
that's UN Women Sweden.
Okay, that's United Nations Women Sweden.
That's right.
Okay. What does being president of United Nations Women Sweden involve day to day?
Oh, on a day-to-day business, well, on a day-to-day business, excuse my language, it's a very not so sexy venture.
Okay.
Because I'm responsible for the budgetary aspects of the organization, financial, budgetary, the leadership. I'm as the president of the UN Women Sweden. I'm the line manager or the boss of the Secretary General of the UN Women Sweden, who's a very competent lady, Ulrika Grandin. The interaction and dialogue with her is very much, something which gives me a lot of strength and inspiration. But otherwise, being the heading the board of directors means making sure that the governance is in place, the proper governance structure is in place. So again, finance, budget, leadership, these kind of issues. So you don't really have to be very strong on women's rights issues per se. But now I am, because that's one field I've been working on for many, many years, women's rights. So I'm extraordinarily happy being the president of UN Women Sweden. Previously, I was the president of the Amnesty International Sweden for 4 years. That was also a massive privilege. But again, it's a lot of hard work, and it's actually about making sure that the organization will live on, budgetarily speaking and financially speaking.
So talking about the position that you held today, does this give a kind of, I would say, a seat into the United Nations on the global level when it comes to, certain policies or global policies that come into...
Of course. I mean, we are a part of our principle is UN Women in New York. So we are part of United Nations, the UN family, which is a huge family, of course. And our main task is, I explained my task as a very not so sexy task, but one very important task all of us have in the board and together with the organization is to actually deliver the messages conveyed in the various United Nations reports coming out on a regular basis on women's rights, for instance, or gender equality or female leadership. And the past years, a lot of worrisome reports have come out from the UN when it comes to women's rights. Today we see a reduction of almost 50% of women's rights organizations in the world. And shutting down that work has a direct effect on the number of organizations. And many, many, many voices are being closed down because of this policy and initiative. That's why I think UN Women's work is now more important than ever. So I feel that this position now for me is it's a very serious position, and the task is more important than ever. Because as I said in the beginning, women's rights are generally speaking on the backlash. And if over 50% of women's rights organizations, if they are closing down, then yeah, we need to have a louder voice when it comes to women's rights for sure, global level.
So is it right to say the power is still governed by... Okay, talking about the current conditions, talking about the war situation today. And we are seeing more conflict happening today everywhere. And now the recent situation that has come about, Iran and Israel attack, and now. How do wars like these affect, or what is your thinking behind, or what is your view behind it, and how, as your position that you hold today, is actually, how do you see from that title or from that position today?
Well, first of all, it's very worrisome. I mean, at the moment, as we speak, we see the world now being in a very, very sensitive situation, for sure, especially with these big giants, clashing with each other. But to be very honest, for the past 5 years, we've had over 55 wars and conflicts going on. Some of them are more interested, has captured the interest of media. Some of them have captured no interest of media. So we live in a very war-prone situation at the moment. But I see a lot of commonalities in all the kind of wars which are going on. Some of them is a result of colonial structures, of very wrongful colonial decisions taken in the past. Some of them clearly has the basis in oil and gas. Some of them are not being questioned or are latently being supported because of certain interest in arms trade and the weapons industry. So I see all this, and I also look at all these conflicts from these perspectives I've mentioned. But I also feel a great sadness towards the fight we've had against climate change, because that's now reduced. That's now being hampered because of all these conflicts going on, and that worries me, because the climate is getting worse. Countries are facing problem with groundwater. Summers are getting hotter, winters are getting more violent and colder. You see this climate change is going about, and we are focusing on wars. I sometimes don't know how
Where
we
we
should
are heading.
where we are heading. And
Also the position of women on the ground.
it's always women paying the price, always mothers paying. In Gaza, Palestine, mothers and the girl child paying the price.
Everyone talks about gender equality. Do you think its meaning is changing with time? And have you seen it being misused?
But when you were talking about misusing it,
Yes.
were you thinking of anything specific?
So I was talking about certain cases or examples back in India when I was going through, like how it has been misused by certain at legal levels or laws. That
For instance, sexual harassment at workplace,
Exactly,
etc.
exactly.
Yes, I've also been around such claims and cases. But
Even around the recent case which has happened in India, a guy, an IT guy who suicide. So it
He
happened in
committed
Bangalore,
suicide.
Committed suicide. So
okay.
certain cases have come up, like
That's horrible, really horrible.
and that was my bit of from the concern. The questions were coming, like, do you think it is being before it was more about awareness, making it was heading in the positive direction, but now we also see certain cases. It's still not that many, I
No,
believe, but
no.
still certain cases that are coming up and have a
Yeah.
negative impact.
Yeah, I don't know the nitty-gritties or the details of this case, so I will not comment on anything surrounding. I heard of these, but I've seen many such claims, especially when it comes to sexual harassment at workplace, where India was, I think, very careful in implementing that piece of legislation. But see, legislation is one thing. Now, what I'm talking about, one thing is what legislation can do. But as long as we are suffering from what I call poverty of mind, we can have as many legislations as we want on rights-based issues. And the Supreme Court can allow, I don't know, gay couples to marry. But if society's mindset is not changed
and not accepting it,
and not accepting it, that claim from the court of law or that status from the court of law will mean nothing at the ground. And so even if you have these kind of legislations in place, we need, again, the dialogue, the discussion, the competence and education on these matters are it's very, very important that we educate ourselves and between ourselves talk about these things. And that's why I constantly underline that we talk about rights, but remember there is a set of duties which comes along as well. Rights is not something that will just come into your lap and you'll like, okay, I have so many rights. So no, I also have duties. And being a right bearer comes with a great amount of duty and respect towards these rights as well. I was thinking about the Me Too movement, because during that movement, a lot of us, I was also guilty of that, asked the question, but why didn't you raise it when it happened? What prevented you from raising that you or someone in your surrounding has been an object or subject for sexual harassment? Why were you quiet? See, that's what I mean by being an ambassador also of duties, because this whole thing of a movement coming up from a rights-based thinking, that's all fine, but we need to ask why was there such a massive silence around atrocities in the first place? That's where the discussion should lie, in my view. And that goes, of course, for women's rights, that goes for corruption, fraud and corruption, for leadership issues. I mean, why are we so quiet?
Is it how it has been, I would say, we are brought up with that kind of, is it cultural thing? Is it educational system? Is it what it is?
I think it's a mix of everything. If you could be, if you are groomed with the whole idea that like what we say in Hindi, hame kya lena dena, what do I have to do with it, or this, how does this concern me? I think as long as you have that mindset, professionally and privately, we have a problem.
As a lack of giving attitude also here, giving. So because sometimes we are so centric to our own life, we don't bother about what is happening outside. And as you rightly said, mera kya lena dena wala point, right? That is so much feeded. That is so much feeded. And
it's increasing. Ego is very central today in our lifestyles. Just leave me to my ambit and my life, and don't involve me in anything. Let me be. I'm only concerned with me and my family, closest family at the most. So I think with the younger generations, this might be a challenge. There's an entitlement to being a modern being today, where I believe we are losing out on care and certain aspects of humanity. I'm sorry, it sounds very bleak, and maybe I'm lowering the energy of this discussion as well, but I am worried about ego, that it's growing as fast as it is, and that people are keeping to themselves more than engaging in probably what some people might call worldly affairs. But I think if we stop caring about what's happening around us, then many things are bound to fail.
Do you see any difference in this when it comes to Western world and the Eastern world?
Yeah. And it's very interesting because I see the Western world now is looking at Eastern values and learning from them, the value of family, the value of inner peace, the value of existential dialogues. Why are we here? What am I doing on earth? What's my role, in the larger picture? Whereas in the Eastern upcoming societies, where these used to be probably the principles, we are now, turning. Yeah. So I think, which is unfortunate. And sometimes I wonder what the end game will be,
But there are some positives as well when it comes to coming from the Western world. Like people are more open to share their perspectives. Like the culture in United States, we see, if we compare it, now the kids that are growing up, they do understand these aspects much better, I believe.
Well, I can't talk about the kids in the US. I have very little experience from the United States. But generally, I feel that children are very much aware. But I also, at the same time, see certain generations taking a more passive role towards how society should be, basically. So, yeah.
Not as an active, but more as a passive.
Passive, and also having the proper theories in place, but maybe not as from an action point of view.
When COVID came, I think there were some communities which hit more harder as compared to others. So, are we doing enough to fix those gaps?
I think I can speak from my professional scope. We see a drawback after COVID when it comes to general labor standards around the world. We also see an increase of child laborers again. So there are many things which have gone back to the levels of 80s and 90s in certain regions because of COVID, because of what happened. Yeah, we also see an increase in global day slavery because, of course, certain business did not close down, and exploitation of general poorer masses or already marginalized communities became a fact, a bigger fact during COVID. So we see a drawback there, absolutely, which is very sad. The learnings, I think, from COVID, if we look at the modern world, or the privileged world, rather, the privileged world, and when I speak to a lot of friends or colleagues, is that it gave us time to reflect on what matters. And I feel that the dialogue and discussion around existential matters actually increased, because people all of a sudden had a lot of time. We could spend more times with families and close friends. And I think many of us actually took the opportunity to think, what kind of life do I really want?
More self-reflection.
More self-reflection, and, what I've been doing, and with the pace I've been doing things, is that something I want to continue doing? So I think it was helpful for people, for instance, with my background, being here in Sweden. I mean, we were really privileged during COVID. In fact, I was joking when they said, you should have 4 meters distance between you and another person during COVID. And I was joking about it. I said, in Sweden, we always have 10 meters. Are you asking us to come closer now? So, jokes apart, I think COVID actually also was a good time for
people to have this kind of
because
self-reflection.
Because existentialism is important, and I see that depression and especially depression amongst youth and young people is increasing.
Yes.
And I think this one solution is actually going back to roots, going back to existential questions and addressing these questions, and letting young people, providing them with platforms where they can discuss these things
more
openly. Instead, we have maybe again social media, which is discussing rather the opposite things: commercialism and how to sell things, how to get more likes. Creating
value-based.
Not so value-based, but more things probably which are artificial and not really of that meaning. So I hope that we will be able to create more such platforms for our young ones, at least. Because the emptiness amongst youth is really on its increase.
This is a question as an advice for the youth and for the listeners. So for listeners who feel powerless at times, what advice would you like to give to them when it comes to the injustice that they see in everyday life?
You see, first of all, I can understand that powerlessness seep in. I mean, we live with that kind of everyday, daily media and discussions on things which are not going in the right direction. But, find a circle of friends or family where you can discuss these things. Find a group of people who give you energy, and be determined. Or if you want to be part of a positive movement, and be determined to be a part of a positive movement, and also I think again go back to basics. Try to not fall for these very loud and noisy platforms. Dare to go back to basics, as in go back to quiet rooms. Make silence a good friend, because I think our young ones, they are very much affected by the noise we have created around them. So go back to silence, meditate, pray. I think these things are very helpful for anyone, for that matter. It will help you get rid of hopelessness. It will give you. It will reduce anxiety. It will create a calm within you. Just opt for silence.
Thank you, Parul, for sharing your insights, your knowledge, and advice for the youth.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any last words or something if you want to say for listeners as a takeaway or something for today?
I think I mentioned that I feel that ego has been on its increase, and sometimes it happens without us actually wanting to become more egoistic, merely because we don't have the tools enough. And I want to go back to the fact I underlined, that we need to go back to what we used to be. We need to go back to more a natural way of being, more walks in nature, more silence, more meditation. I think all these things really matter for good leadership, for good citizenship, for becoming a good family member, for becoming a good rights bearer and an ambassador of rights as well. That's, I think, one method which we all should indulge in: more silence.
Thank you.
No,
Thank you
thank
for
you,
sharing.
Neha.
Thank you.
Mm.
And if today's conversation resonated with you, please share this episode and keep the dialogue alive. I'm Neha from All About You and For You.
Thank you, Neha.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.